Hello, Eason here, and welcome back to Metal Monday, where I talk about albums that I might recommend that you listen to so you can start your week off right. This week, I have another one of the best albums to come out in 2019. Now, you may be asking yourself why I'm so stuck in last year. Well, it's because there are a lot of albums that I wanted to talk about last year, which I couldn't due to some technical difficulties, and I'm doing this now. And moreover, it's my overall philosophy that if an album is good, it's going to be good regardless of when it was recorded or when it was released. For this week, I chose one of Refining Darkness Records' flagship bands that has been in the forefront ever since the release of this sophomore record. The album I am talking about is SAPROPHYTIC Divinations by the Manitou Springs, Colorado band Helleborus. Don't you just love it when black metal helps you expand your vocabulary? Helleborus is named after a flower that is apparently gorgeous to look at but incredibly poisonous that only blooms in winter. Fitting name for a black metal band for sure. The band has one more full-length release under their belt, which was 2016's Carnal Sabbath, which has brought them some notoriety, but their true explosion, true blowing up came with the release of Saprophytic Divinations. What exactly is a saprophytic divination, you ask? Well, according to the online dictionary, saprophytic refers to any kind of organism that gets its primary nourishment from dead things. In this regard, a saprophytic divination would be any form of divination or soothsaying that is derived primarily from the reading of entrails, aka the good old way of doing things. Saprophytic Divinations more or less refers to the lyrical concept of this album. As a whole, the album consists of 9 separate summoning rituals that are meant to bring forth entities from beyond our world. Yeah, and the more I go into the terminology used, the closer we get to building an actual black metal framework. At a most basic level, Helleborus is indeed a black metal band, but just calling them a black metal band is doing them a little bit of disservice. While it is true that the band incorporates a lot of the more foundational elements of black into their sound, especially by way of the second wave of black metal, the sound doesn't stop there. The band also adds liberal amounts of death metal, especially in some places the more cavernous approach to death metal, to their sound, and there are instances where other genres, most notably sludge metal, is added to the mix. The style of riffing in Saprophytic Divinations is sort of like an alchemical mix between black metal and technically inclined death metal. You have your tremolo-picked passages, but they are often married and or juxtaposed against the more angular riffing that you find in death metal. All these is laid over black metal style drums that often resort to blast beats and feature incredibly nuanced and very tasteful cymbal work throughout. There is rumbling bass that glues this all together and lays it on top of operatic synth keyboards that never cross the line into full-on cheesy as some of the more symphonic black metal bands tend to do. The vocals that are laid on top of all this usually come in the form of growls that are sort of like a cross between death growls and black metal style more high-pitched growling. There are some shrieks and just a tiny bit of gurgles in between. All this creates, as you might be gathering, a wonderfully varied package of both riffing and approach to songwriting. In fact, the album basically wastes no time in presenting to you this unique blend of black and death that the band has concocted. The opening track, Celestial Grave, alternates between more groovy death metal parts and the more straight-up black metal passages. In fact, Celestial Grave as an opening track is the perfect choice for several reasons. One, it's not a pointless ambient passage that got to be its own song for some reason. Two, it introduces you to most of the elements that you will be getting more familiar with throughout the album without actually spoiling what the rest of the album is going to be like. And three, it showcases the band's extremely tight, extremely focused songwriting and mastery of song flow. The reason why Celestial Grave doesn't spoil the rest of the album is that despite featuring the elements that the band has crafted as part of their core sound, it is not an indication of how things will be going without variation. Saprophytic Divinations, quite refreshingly, is the polar opposite of that. It is an album constructed on creating variations based on a core sound. The band's excellent command on variation and their insistence on variety throughout this album is what makes Saprophytic Divinations an incredibly lively and highly engaging experience. Just as how Celestial Grave gets things rolling, Allround Ghost, the second track, takes them in a more grinding, a more middling black metal route before the band throws perhaps the biggest curveball of this album, which is the third track, Verum Fidei, which is an acoustic interlude complete with spoken word passages. This and moments like this make sure that you as a listener are always kept on your toes and there's always a new surprise right around the corner. Sometimes these surprises are, like in the case of Verum Fidei, kind of soft, or there are surprises like the incredibly dissonant, almost sludge-like Juniper Shrine. The track Juniper Shrine gets special mention due to it being an interesting peak within the album. The song takes its strength from an incredibly dissonant and crushing mixture that is a result of an unholy matrimony between black metal and sludge. It is a profoundly disturbing moment in an album that is, up until that point, has been more about dark and sort of operatic rituals to raise demons. If the other songs represent instances in which the band is trying to conjure up demons, I would say that Juniper Shrine represents a moment when the band manages to conjure up a great old one whose mere presence is enough to break the minds of those who are there to witness it. As if recognizing that you might need a break after all that, the band sort of returns to more keyboard-laden, more slightly symphonically inclined black metal with the next track, the aptly titled Decaying Observer. I see what you did there. And then proceeds to inject a little bit more death into the mix with the next song, Noctiamnus. And it is moments like this, the natural ebb and flow of the album, that makes it so easy to get lost within it. This sense of variety that permeates throughout the album's tracklist across all 9 rituals makes it very easy to get lost in it and helps it be very captivating. However, all this could have gone off the wayside if the band did not know how to glue these together. This is an area, however, in which Helleborus thankfully manages to succeed to the fullest extent of the word. You see, Saprophytic Divinations could have easily ended up a really scattershot album that had a lot of great ideas if the songs were taken individually, but as a whole failed. But thankfully, Helleborus has taken 2 very important steps in order to ensure that this does not happen. The first thing that the band has done is to make sure that their core sound is as open to variation while retaining an identity as possible. By melding black and death style riffs together organically, the band makes sure that they are able to shift within the spectrum of black to death. They can incorporate liberal amounts of each and still come up with an instantly recognizable sound of their own. This helps the band manage to glue the album together in a very foundational level. The second thing the band has done to make sure that this album functions as a whole is the impeccable and rock-solid atmosphere that they have woven throughout it. You see, I said in the beginning of this video that Saprophytic Divinations consisted of 9 separate rituals made to summon entities from beyond our world. It actually feels like that throughout. The images that the band manages to conjure up with their music is of medieval castles, of dank stone basement with lots of columns preferably, of candles lit and dark figures with robes trying to conjure up beings that are so far beyond their understanding that they really shouldn't be fucking with that thing, goddammit. The atmosphere in saprophytic divinations is one of unsettling foreboding and of things going horribly wrong. The ritualistic aspects of this mood that is provided by the band is so palpable that you almost feel like you are an unwilling witness to the rituals that are going on. Which is just another point in which this album manages to succeed, because not only do you have an album with a wonderfully diverse track list full of tightly and very skillfully written songs with impeccable flow, engaging instrumentation, you also have one that is immersive and atmospheric. However, none of this would have been possible if the album had brick-walled, too raw, or just overall bad production, which is when the album's unsung hero, sound engineer Shane Howard, comes into the picture. You see, Shane Howard has done in the production part of this album a couple things to ensure that the listener manages to get the most out of the experience. The first, and I believe the most important, is his masterful use of stereo space. The first thing that he has done is that any keyboards and or atmospheric synths you're going to be hearing will be coming from the back row instead of being on your sides. This does a couple things. Firstly, it keeps the stereoed vocals and the guitars in the forefront, and secondly, it fills up a space that is usually left undisturbed. The second thing he has done is that he has panned the drums out as widely as possible. This means a couple things. One, it means that whenever there's a tom attack, you're going to hear it traveling from one side to the other as it goes on, and there are instances where there are extended tom attacks that just keep going back and forth. Secondly, the cymbals are likewise panned wide, which means that different types of cymbals are not going to be coming from the same narrow central space. They're going to be coming from all over. This creates an immersive listening experience because it places the listener in the center of things without the listener having to seek out that space. The guitars, the bass, and the vocals have been polished quite masterfully in that they still have enough bite, but they are not quite as raw as you would expect from a record like this. Now, you might object to the more polished sound of the guitars, provided that this is supposed to be black metal, and you might demand a bit of rawness, but I would say that the smoothness of the guitars fits exceptionally well with the smoothness of everything else, namely the atmospherics and the drums, and the overall sound is suitably polished but not overly glossy. Shane Howard, we salute you. Now, with all of that said, do I recommend that you listen to this album? I'll bottom line it for you. If you are into black, death, symphonic, power metal, if you are into metal at all, I will guarantee you that there will be something for you in this album. It's everything that you might ask for from a metal album. Well-balanced production, engaging track lists, suitably brutal tunes, memorable riffs, great vocal performances, solid atmosphere. Like, what the fuck more can you even ask for? So if you have an hour to kill, if you still have a commute, or if you just want to chill and listen to something that was incredibly well constructed, this is the album for you. Well, that's another album off the list of the ones that I wanted to talk about. I think I am just gonna go and listen to this one again, because no matter how many times I've listened to it, I don't seem to be getting tired of it anytime soon. And if this is a shape of things to come, or the quality that we can expect from Helleborus, I would say add them to the list of the bands that you are watching. Until next time, it's Eason. Peace out.